So basically what I'm doing now is I'm putting my rub on. This is a rub that I make myself. I've kind of, through a lot of trial and error, kind of came to some flavors that I really liked, and other people started liking them. I started getting awards with it, and so I kind of stayed with what worked. It's basically a paprika and a brown sugar base with some salt and pepper and a few other goodies in there. So it's got some sweet, and there is a little bit of stuff for a little bit of heat in there, but not a ton. I prefer kind of more of a sweet rib, so mine's more of a sweet base with just a little bit of heat. Some of the other areas like a little bit more heat than sweet, places like Texas, things like that, but I kind of more like the sweet Memphis style. Now I also, when we talk about Memphis style ribs, this is what they call a Memphis Dry rib. And what that means is I don't use any sauces at all on my ribs. It's strictly the dry rub that I put on it, and then I cook it with strictly the dry rub, and I never ever sauce it. Sometimes I find that in competition, sometimes I do get docked a little bit for that, because there's some people that just really like those wet sauced ribs. But when it comes down to people and friends and family and all the people that try my ribs, they really like how there's no sauce on it, but yet they're still really moist and flavorful. And you know, I just think that's mostly due to the rub and the way I cook it.
And it looks like you're kind of liberal on your rub there.
I'm very liberal on the rub. Now on the back side, because the rub doesn't stick real well, so I just kind of pat it in a little bit, and then I'll go ahead and let it drop down onto the pan here, and that's how I can get the edges real good and got that excess on there. So I usually don't waste any of the rub. But yeah, definitely like to get a lot of the rub on there, because that is my main flavor profile, is the rub. There is a point through the process after I get about usually either up to 160 degrees in the smoking process, or if for some reason it's taken longer than 3 hours through my process, I will at that point actually wrap the rib with tin foil, and at that time I do put a little extra sweet on there. So when I wrap the rib on the very top, I will put a little bit of brown sugar on the top of the rib just to kind of give it a little bit of sweetness. So when you cook it and you're done with it, not only does it pull off the bone, but it's almost like a piece of candy, because that sweetness really comes through. See pictures. Basically these are a St. Louis pork rib, so they come basically as a spare rib, and then they're trimmed down to basically make it a little bit nicer and thinner look. But the nice thing about the St. Louis styles, they're a little thicker than your baby backs. They got a little bit more meat on them, and so they tend to have a lot more flavor. So these were on the smoker for about 5 hours. The first about 3 hours got solid smoke, and then I wrapped them and put a little bit of brown sugar on them to get a little bit more sweetness, and then 2 hours until they got to an internal temperature of 195. Really 195 is kind of between 195 and 200 is a really good point to get the internal temperature at. At 190, the fat really starts to melt into the meat really well, and so you want to get that fat to kind of render into the meat and really melt into the meat really well, and that adds flavor and tenderness. Cut some of these down right between the bone here. And you can see the pink around the edges there. That's the smoke ring, and you can see there's still some nice juices in there.
You know, that's something that reminds me of people get confused that don't know barbecue. They're like, it's pink.
Yeah.
It's raw.
And the pink does not mean it's not cooked. This is actually well cooked, but that pink around there is basically the smoke ring, and so that's that smoke getting in, penetrating into the meat.
And if it was raw, the pink would be in the middle, not on the outside.
Exactly. Exactly. So we're just going to cut up some ribs here.
Man, those slice nice. Must be the knife you're using.
Well, I think
Is that a competition secret you got there?
Nope, this is just, you know, to cut these, you know, first of all, you can see some of that juice kind of still in there. I'm using a serrated knife just because I can get it to go a little bit easier into the rib. And it tends to work a little bit better for cutting the ribs a little bit easier. And then they're a little tougher when you get down to the end here, just because the ribs are never uniform. Might have to just eat that little bit of bark there. This one, I think we're just going to go ahead.
What bark?
Exactly. I think we're just going to go ahead and pull that one off and eat that one the way it is. So anyway, so these are the St. Louis style ribs. You can see the nice smoke ring in there. You can see that they're still nice and moist with that juiciness. We let them rest for probably about half hour, 45 minutes to let that juice kind of penetrate back into the rib. And then again, these are completely what they call Memphis style dry ribs. There is absolutely no sauce, so that is not sauce. That's just juice from the rib and the rub that I originally put on.
You got like an alchemy going there. Dry rub and meat's fat and
Yep.
turns into candy.
Turns into just candy goodness.
Shucks, that's good.